The air inside the alien base was thick with tension. Shadows of enormous towers loomed over the metal floors, and the soft of the machinery echoed through the vast hallways. Rumors had spread across the galaxy about this place. The infamous gravity chamber. No warrior had ever survived it. Not once. Stories of those who tried filled the minds of soldiers and adventurers alike, their courage crushed under impossible gravity. Among the spectators, whispers ran like a silent current. Alien warriors, tall and muscular, with eyes sharp as blades, stared at the small human who had just arrived. She was young, her build far smaller than any of the aliens, but her eyes burned with determination. Where others saw weakness, she saw opportunity. "Do you really think she can do it?" One alien muttered to another, his tone dripping with disbelief. "She's human," the other replied. "No human has ever lasted more than a few minutes in there. She'll be gone before the gravity even reaches half its strength." The human girl, however, walked forward calmly. Her boots clicked against the metal floor. She carried no weapons, no armor, only herself. Every step she took seemed to challenge the very air around her, as if daring the legends to be true. Inside the chamber, gravity was not like anything on Earth. It could increase 100-fold, pushing creatures to the ground with unimaginable force. Bones could snap, muscles could tear, and lungs could collapse. Those who entered and failed were remembered in hollow recordings, frozen in the moments of their defeat for others to learn or fear. As she approached the entrance, a hush fell over the room. The alien commander, a figure whose armor gleamed with strange energy, stepped forward. His voice was deep and commanding, echoing in the hall. "You are small," he said. "You are human. You have no right to enter the chamber. No warrior survives. Do you understand?" The human girl paused, her gaze steady. "I understand," she said softly, but there was no fear in her voice. "I'm ready." A few guards tried to hide their laughter. They had seen warriors fall before, big, strong, trained fighters who had dreams and pride, all destroyed in the chamber. And here was a human, standing tall as if gravity were just a suggestion. The doors to the chamber slowly opened with a hiss. Inside, the room was vast, filled with glowing panels and moving platforms. The floor shimmered with a strange energy that suggested both danger and power. Hollow recordings of past failures played in the air, showing warriors bending under the invisible weight, screaming, struggling, and ultimately collapsing. The human stepped in without hesitation. Her heart beat steadily. Her mind was clear. She knew that fear could crush her faster than gravity ever could. As the chamber doors closed behind her, the gravity began to rise. Slowly at first, almost imperceptibly, but the pressure on her body grew with every second. Her knees bent under the force, her muscles screamed, and yet she moved. She had trained for strength, yes, but nothing could truly prepare a human for this alien technology. The first test was simple: stay upright. Many had failed at this very step. She felt her feet press against the floor, as if the world itself was trying to pin her down. Her lungs worked harder to pull in air. Every breath was a struggle, but she refused to kneel. Her eyes scanned the room, noting the patterns of moving panels, the energy pulses, the potential hazards. Minutes passed, or maybe it was seconds. Time seemed distorted under the crushing force. She staggered slightly, but she did not fall. The gravity increased, higher, faster than any human had survived before. She gritted her teeth, muscles trembling, but she adapted. Her movements became smaller, more precise. Every step she took was calculated. She began to understand the rhythm of the chamber. Outside, the spectators gasped. Alien warriors leaned forward, their disbelief growing with each second she endured. They had expected the human to collapse immediately, to become just another failure recorded in the chamber's memory. But she did not. She moved. She survived. Then, something unexpected happened. A sudden spike in gravity forced her to the floor. Her hand scraped against the shining metal, and her chest felt as though it might cave in. Pain surged through her, sharp and hot, but in that moment, she realized something others had never seen. The chamber did not just punish, it could be used. She shifted her weight, using the crushing force to push herself higher. She leapt, rolled, and landed with surprising control. Every motion became an experiment. testing the limits of both her body and the gravity around her. The legend spoke of death, but she discovered opportunity. Her movements grew faster. Each action built upon the last, turning weakness into strength. She began to punch, kick, and jump in ways no human should have been able to. Panels and obstacles that had once seemed lethal now became tools, launching her higher or shielding her from sudden spikes in pressure. The chamber, which had defeated countless warriors, started to feel predictable. Every shift of gravity, every pulse of energy, she adapted. She smiled faintly under her breath. This was no longer a test of survival. It was a challenge she could master. Back in the observation room, the alien commander's jaw dropped. The whispers of doubt turned into outright murmurs of fear and astonishment. She's surviving, one alien said, his voice trembling. She's controlling it, another stammered. The human girl heard nothing. Her focus was complete, her mind sharp as a blade. Every motion was deliberate. She was no longer a weak human in a deadly chamber. She was becoming something the aliens had never imagined. Minutes passed, though they felt like hours. Her body screamed for rest, but she refused. She had discovered the key to the chamber. It did not only test strength, it amplified it, and she was ready to harness it. Suddenly, the chamber shifted violently. Gravity doubled, then tripled, pressing down with a force that should have shattered bones. Most warriors would have screamed, would have begged for mercy. She only laughed quietly, the sound almost lost under the immense pressure. Using her newfound rhythm, she bounced off the floor, flipped midair, and landed perfectly on a moving panel. Every eye in the observation room widened. The hollow recordings of past failures played again, but now they felt like distant shadows compared to human girl's performance. She was rewriting the story of the chamber in real time. As the gravity continued to fluctuate, she moved with elegance and precision. It was a dance, a deadly, impossible dance that made her opponents in the viewing room feel powerless. The chamber that had killed so many now became her training ground, her proving ground, her playground. And then, in the most unexpected moment, the gravity suddenly dropped. She was floating slightly, the weight lifting from her body, but she did not stop. Instead, she used the moment to leap higher, faster, striking panels, dodging obstacles, pushing herself beyond what anyone thought possible. She had turned the impossible into an advantage. The chamber, meant to crush warriors, had become her ally. And in that moment, every alien in the room realized one terrifying truth. This human was not like any warrior they had known. The human girl paused in the center of the chamber, breathing heavily but smiling confidently. Her eyes shone with determination, her body tense yet controlled. She had survived the first test, the first onslaught of impossible gravity, and she had done more than survive. She had begun to master it. Outside, the alien commander clenched his fists. His voice was low, almost a growl. "No human should have done that," he said. She did not respond. She only stared at the walls of the chamber, already calculating her next moves. The unexpected turning point had come, and with it, a new legend was beginning. A human who would not only survive the gravity chamber, but redefine it entirely. And deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning. The chamber had been a test, yes, but it was also an opportunity. A place where others had died. She would thrive. A place that was meant to destroy her. She would turn into her training room. The story of survival had changed. The legend of the gravity chamber had met the unexpected. The human who refused to be broken. The human girl had survived the opening test, but the chamber was far from done with her. Outside, the alien warriors whispered in disbelief, their jaws tight and their eyes wide. No one had ever lasted this long, not a single warrior. And yet, here she was, small and human, moving with precision that defied reason. Inside the chamber, the gravity shifted again. This time, it didn't rise slowly. It jumped. A sudden pulse slammed her into the floor, forcing her to catch herself with her palms. Pain shot up her arms, and for a brief instant, her mind screamed, "You can't survive this!" But she ignored it. She had learned something crucial. The chamber was alive in its own way. It responded, it tested, it punished, but it also had patterns. Every spike, every shift was not random. It had rhythm. And if she could understand it, she could move with it instead of against it. The first challenge of the trial became clear. Endurance. The gravity would crush her bones, squeeze her lungs, and test her limits. But endurance alone would not be enough. To survive, she needed to adapt. She rolled forward, using the energy of the chamber against itself. Each step she took was precise, each landing calculated. The floor beneath her feet glowed with shifting light, indicating areas of extreme pressure. A misstep could mean instant death. She focused. One step at a time, she moved. Slowly at first, then faster. Her arms and legs trembled under the weight, but she found a rhythm. The chamber's energy pulses became almost musical. Beats she could anticipate. She began to push herself against the pressure. She jumped, twisted midair, and landed on panels that others had fallen from. With each move, she learned. With each step, she grew stronger. A sudden surge of gravity forced her flat on the floor again. For a heartbeat, it seemed impossible to move. The energy pressed against her chest like a mountain. Her lungs burned, and every muscle screamed for release. But she had already learned the first rule. Panic is death. Calm is power. With a controlled breath, she pushed herself upward, using the chamber's force as a spring. She flipped, landed perfectly, and continued moving. Each motion turned the chamber from a weapon into a playground. Outside, alien warriors watched in horror. Some could barely comprehend what they were seeing. Others whispered in fear, realizing that this human was not only surviving, but adapting, even mastering the deadly environment that had killed their strongest soldiers. The commander's voice cut through the murmurs, calm yet filled with tension. "Do not underestimate her," he warned. "She is human. She should not be able to do this." And yet, she continued. Every step became bolder, more precise. She discovered small tricks that turned gravity to her advantage. When a sudden spike threatened to crush her, she jumped just as the pressure peaked, letting it propel her across the floor. When a platform shifted, she landed lightly, absorbing the energy instead of fighting it. Minutes passed, though they felt like hours. She tested herself constantly, pushing against each limit the chamber presented. She kicked, rolled, and twisted. She began to experiment with timing, learning how long each spike would last, how quickly gravity would rise or fall, how the chamber would respond to movement. At one point, a sudden burst of energy lifted her off the floor entirely. For a moment, she floated weightless, as if the chamber itself was acknowledging her skill. She could see the panels below, the glowing energy, the spots where others had failed. And instead of fear, she felt exhilaration. She had turned a weapon into a tool. Then came the first truly deadly test. The walls themselves began to shift. Panels moved like giant jaws closing in on her, crushing anything in their path. Many warriors had been trapped and flattened instantly by this mechanism. She dodged, leaped, and twisted through the moving walls. Each maneuver more precise than the last, a glowing spike rose suddenly from the floor, aiming to impale her. Instinctively, she rolled to the side and grabbed a ledge, swinging herself out of danger. Every movement was faster, smoother, controlled. It was no longer just survival. She was learning to predict, to react, to control. The chamber seemed to respond to her confidence. Gravity shifted more violently. Energy pulses quickened, and obstacles came faster. But she adjusted. She began to incorporate acrobatics she had never imagined possible. Flips, spins, and jumps became tools to navigate the deadly environment. Every motion made her stronger, faster, more attuned to the rhythm of the chamber. The alien warriors outside gasped. Some whispered that perhaps the legends were wrong, that perhaps the chamber itself could be mastered. Others shook their heads, unwilling to believe what they were seeing. The human girl felt the weight of every eye upon her, but she did not falter. She had learned the most important lesson. Fear is heavier than gravity. The chamber could crush her body, but it could not touch her mind. Her mind was free, sharp, and clear. Then came the most unexpected challenge yet. The floor began to vibrate violently, sending energy waves through the chamber. Panels rose and fell, and spikes erupted from every direction. Many warriors would have panicked. She, however, smiled faintly. She had predicted this moment. Using a combination of timing and momentum, she jumped from panel to panel, dodging every spike. Every landing was precise, every movement calculated. She began to move in ways that no human had ever moved before. Each action became part of a larger pattern, almost like a dance, a deadly, impossible dance. The chamber, designed to kill, had become her partner, responding to her movements. Minutes blurred together. Her body ached, her lungs burned, her muscles screamed, but she did not stop. She had entered the chamber to survive, but now she was learning to thrive. Every obstacle, every spike, every surge of gravity became a lesson, teaching her how to turn weakness into strength. And then, something incredible happened. A sudden spike of energy lifted her high into the air. For a moment, she floated above the chamber, weightless and free. She looked down at the floor, at the glowing panels, at the obstacles she had already overcome. And in that moment, she realized something profound. She could control the chamber. She could not defeat it entirely, perhaps, but she could work with it. The alien commander leaned forward, his eyes wide. "Impossible," he whispered. She landed lightly, absorbed the energy of the spike, and continued moving. She was no longer reacting. She was anticipating, predicting, even directing the flow of the deadly environment. The chamber had met its match. Outside, whispers turned into shocked silence. No one had ever seen this level of control, this combination of human adaptability and courage. The legends of the chamber were being rewritten in real time. The final test of the trial approached. Gravity began to surge uncontrollably. Spikes erupted. Panels shifted unpredictably. Most warriors would have panicked. She, however, smiled. She had mastered rhythm, timing, and precision. She had turned fear into focus. As the final surge hit, she leapt into the air, twisted mid-flight, and landed perfectly. Panels that had threatened to crush her were now stepping stones. Spikes that had aimed for her heart were dodged effortlessly. Every action, every movement, every breath became a testament to her skill and courage. When the chamber finally calmed, she stood in the center, breathing heavily but composed. The gravity normalized, panels ceased moving, and the energy pulses faded. She had survived the first trial completely, something no warrior had ever done. And she had done more than survive. She had adapted, learned, and even mastered parts of the chamber. The alien commander stepped back, his expression a mixture of awe and fear. "No human should have done this, but she did," he said, his voice trembling. She did not reply. She only looked around the chamber, her eyes sharp and confident. She had survived the first trial, but this was only the beginning. The gravity chamber was no longer a test. It was her training ground. And the warriors who had doubted her would soon learn that a human could turn even the deadliest challenge into an advantage. The unexpected turning point had passed, and the first trial was over. But in the eyes of the human girl, it was only the start of something far greater, a journey that would redefine what it meant to be strong, to survive, and to conquer the impossible. The gravity chamber had already tested her, crushed her, and pushed her to the edge. But the human girl, small and fragile by alien standards, was beginning something no warrior had ever done. She was learning to turn the chamber's deadly power into her own advantage. At first, the chamber seemed to mock her. Gravity surged unpredictably, walls shifted without warning, and spikes erupted from floors and ceilings. Any misstep meant death. Her muscles burned, her lungs ached, and even her bones seemed to protest. Most humans would have given up within minutes. Most warriors had, but she did not. She paused for only a heartbeat, feeling the pressure around her, and then she smiled. She understood something that no one else had ever realized. Weakness was only a limit until you learn how to use it. The chamber pushed harder. Gravity quadrupled, pressing her to the floor. For a moment, her face was pressed against the glowing metal, and she thought she would be crushed. But instead of fighting, she surrendered to force for just an instant, then pushed off it, using the pressure to launch herself upward. Her small frame became almost weightless as she twisted in the air, dodging spikes that erupted in unpredictable patterns. She landed on a moving panel with perfect balance. The aliens watching from above leaned forward, their jaws slack. Every move she made defied expectation, logic, and even possibility. She began to experiment. Gravity was not just a threat, it was a tool. She tested the limits of her muscles, timing each push and pull to the chamber's rhythm. A spike aimed to impale her. She used the force of her dodge to strike another obstacle, bouncing off it like a spring. Panels that shifted suddenly. She timed her jumps to land as they moved, turning deadly traps into platforms. Minutes passed, though they felt like hours. Her mind raced faster than her body, calculating angles, force, and timing. Every movement became a lesson. Every obstacle became a teacher. And slowly, she realized that the chamber itself had weaknesses, patterns that no alien had ever discovered. The first major breakthrough came when the floor beneath her began to vibrate violently. Panels shifted like hungry jaws, and spikes shot up in random sequences. Most warriors would have panicked, thrown off by the unpredictability. But she adapted. She saw the pattern in the chaos, a rhythm hidden beneath the apparent randomness. And then she moved with it. She flipped midair, landing on a raised panel that had been impossible to reach seconds before. She twisted her body as a spike shot past, landing lightly on the glowing floor. The chamber that had killed warriors instantly was now responding to her moves. It was almost as if it recognized her as a master rather than prey. The spectators outside could barely comprehend what they were witnessing. Some whispered in disbelief, others in fear. No human could ever do that. Yet she did. Her small hand struck glowing control panels in midair, redirecting moving platforms to her advantage. She had begun to use the chamber's own mechanisms to create pathways, to turn traps into stepping stones. Every motion was calculated, every breath measured. The chamber's deadly force became her ally, amplifying her strength rather than breaking it. Then the walls themselves joined the test. Panels shifted outward violently, trying to crush her from both sides. She ducked, rolled, and twisted, timing every move perfectly. A spike shot past her shoulder, grazing her arm, and she smiled through the pain. For the first time, danger felt manageable. She began to experiment with vertical movement. Gravity pressed down like an iron weight, but she found ways to use it to jump higher, spin faster, and land with precision. She flipped from wall to wall, dodging spikes, leaping over panels, and striking obstacles in midair to propel herself further. Minutes turned into longer stretches, and she moved with a speed and agility no human or alien had ever achieved inside the chamber. She had learned to read the pressure, the spikes, the shifting panels, and the energy pulses. She could anticipate the chamber's attacks before they happened. She had turned the impossible into a game. At one point, a sudden surge of gravity crushed her to the floor. Most humans would have screamed or collapsed. She only gritted her teeth and pushed off the metal with all her strength. The spike of pressure became a springboard, sending her soaring across the chamber. She twisted in midair, striking a panel with her foot to gain even more height, and landed softly on another moving platform. Her movements were almost artistic, deadly, impossible, and yet beautiful. Each step, jump, and dodge was a demonstration of creativity born from survival. She was no longer reacting. She was controlling. She had learned to anticipate the chamber's attacks, and even manipulate them to her advantage. The alien commander could not hide his shock. This is impossible," he whispered, his voice trembling. "No warrior, human or not, could survive this long. And yet, she moves like a shadow, like the chamber bent for her." She felt no fear, no hesitation. Every motion was deliberate, every choice calculated. She had turned weakness into strength, fear into power, and survival into mastery. The chamber was no longer a test. It was her arena. Then came the chamber's most unpredictable trap, a sudden pulse of energy from floor, ceiling, and walls, all at once. Spikes erupted, panels shifted violently, and gravity surged to levels that should have crushed her instantly. Most warriors would have fallen. Most humans would have died. But she did not. She jumped, twisted, and struck her foot against a wall panel midair, propelling herself toward a floating ledge. She rolled upon landing, absorbed the force of the spikes, and immediately leapt again. Every motion was calculated, precise, and fast. She began to see patterns in the chaos, a rhythm no one else could see. Gravity spikes had a beat, panels had a flow, energy pulses had a pattern. She was no longer struggling. She was dancing. A deadly, impossible dance where every step made her stronger, faster, and more deadly. The alien warriors outside whispered, some shaking their heads in disbelief, some backing away in fear. This human had done what no one thought possible. She had taken a machine designed to kill and turned it into her tool, her teacher, her weapon. Her mind raced. She realized she could push further. If she mastered the patterns, she could not only survive the chamber, she could dominate it. And with that thought, she began a new experiment, combining speed, timing, and power to move faster than the chamber expected, striking obstacles not to avoid them, but to use them for motion. A spike shot toward her chest. Instead of dodging, she leapt into it, absorbing its energy and using it to launch herself even higher. Panels moved like invisible ladders under her feet. Walls that should have trapped her became trampolines for her momentum. She began to laugh, softly at first, then louder. The sound echoed through the chamber. Danger was still real, but it no longer terrified her. The chamber had become her playground. Every deadly mechanism was a tool she could use. Every shift in gravity was an opportunity. Hours seemed to pass in minutes. She experimented with flips, jumps, and movements no warrior had ever attempted. Each success built confidence. Each failure, mere glancing blows or small mistakes, was a lesson. She was learning faster than anyone could imagine. Finally, she paused at the center of the chamber, breathing heavily but composed. Her body was exhausted, yet her mind felt sharper than ever. She had survived impossible gravity, spikes, moving panels, and energy pulses. More than that, she had learned to harness them, to use them as extensions of her own strength. Outside, the alien commander leaned forward, pale and trembling. No human could ever, he stopped, realizing there were no words. She had turned the impossible into her strength. She had redefined the meaning of power. The human girl looked around the chamber, her eyes gleaming. The first trial had been survived. The second trial, which she had just turned into a victory, had shown her potential. She was no longer just a human trying to survive. She was a warrior shaping her environment, bending the deadliest challenges to her will. And deep inside, she knew this was only the beginning. The gravity chamber had been a test. She had passed it. But now it was a training ground, a place of growth, a place where no warrior could match her, because she had learned the greatest secret. Strength is born from mastering fear, turning weakness into advantage, and bending the impossible to your will. The chamber had met its first real master, and the galaxy would never forget the name of the human, who did what no one else could. The human girl had survived the impossible. She had turned weakness into strength and fear into focus. But now, the gravity chamber no longer seemed like a prison or a test. It felt alive, like a living challenge that had finally found someone worthy. And she smiled, knowing that she would play this deadly game on her own terms. The first pulse of the day was brutal. Gravity surged to levels that had crushed alien warriors instantly. Spikes erupted from every direction, walls shifted violently, and panels moved with terrifying speed. Most humans, or even aliens, would have been flattened in seconds. But she didn't just survive, she danced with the chaos. She leapt from a glowing panel, twisting in midair, and landed lightly on a moving platform. A spike shot toward her, but instead of dodging, she used it as a springboard, bouncing higher than any human had ever bounced. Another panel rose beneath her, carrying her to the ceiling, where she kicked off to launch herself across the chamber. Every movement was precise, elegant, and deadly. The alien commanders outside watched in shock. Their strongest warriors, those who had conquered dozens of planets and survived countless battles, had all fallen here. And now, a human was defying everything they knew. She is not just surviving, whispered one alien warrior. She is controlling it. She didn't hear them. Her mind was focused, calculating angles, timing spikes, and predicting platform movements. She had learned to read the pulse of the chamber, to feel its rhythm like a heartbeat beneath her feet. Every obstacle, every trap, every spike was no longer a threat. It was a tool. The chamber seemed to recognize her skill. Gravity shifted unpredictably, but she adjusted instantly. Panels that had once threatened to crush her now became stepping stones. Walls that should have trapped her became launch points. Spikes that aimed for her heart became tools to propel her into the air. Every motion, every jump, every roll was part of a larger plan. She began to experiment creatively. A spike shot from the floor. She jumped straight into it, absorbing its force and flipping over it. A moving panel tilted beneath her. She used it to swing to the ceiling, kicking off a wall to reach a previously unreachable platform. She was learning, adapting, and dominating all at once. Minutes passed like seconds. Her muscles burned, yet she moved faster, sharper, more confidently than ever before. Gravity spiked to absurd levels, enough to flatten even the strongest alien. Yet she moved as if it were nothing, twisting, flipping, and landing with perfect control. Then came the most dangerous part of the chamber. Energy cores. These massive glowing orbs pulsed violently, releasing bursts of power that could shatter walls, crush floors, or fry anyone who touched them. Most warriors avoided them completely, knowing the risk was fatal. She didn't avoid them. She danced around them. She leapt over one core, landing on a tilted panel to redirect her momentum. She flipped off another, using its energy pulse to launch herself higher. Each interaction made her stronger, more precise, and more creative. She wasn't just surviving. She was playing, experimenting, turning lethal danger into her personal advantage. The alien spectators were silent. Some of them stared with wide eyes, unable to move. Others whispered in awe. "She is rewriting the rules," said the commander quietly. "No one, not a single warrior, has ever done this." But the human girl paid them no mind. She was in her element. She moved faster than any I could follow, dodging spikes, flipping off walls and bouncing across panels. She had learned to anticipate every shift, every pulse, every hazard. The chamber was no longer a deadly maze. It was her stage. Then came the aerial assault. Drones dropped into the chamber, firing beams and spikes in random patterns. Most warriors would have panicked, dodging blindly and risking fatal mistakes. She, however, adapted immediately. She timed her flips and jumps to avoid the drone's attacks, using walls and panels to shield herself. When one drone fired a spike toward her, she flipped into the spike, letting it launch her across the chamber to a higher platform. Her creativity was astonishing. Every obstacle became part of a chain reaction. She struck a spike, bounced into a moving panel, kicked off a wall, and landed perfectly, all in a single fluid motion. The chamber, which had crushed the mightiest warriors, now seemed to bend to her will. She laughed quietly, a sound full of confidence and exhilaration. The danger was real, yes, but she was beyond fear. She had learned the most important lesson of all. The chamber could not hurt her if she mastered its rhythm, if she used its power instead of fighting it. Then came the ultimate test. Gravity surged to its maximum, higher than ever before. Panels shifted violently, walls closed like jaws. Spikes erupted in rapid succession, and energy pulses filled the chamber with blinding light. Most warriors would have screamed, fallen, and died instantly. She, however, only gritted her teeth and smiled. She jumped, twisted, and landed perfectly on a panel that tilted beneath her weight. A spike shot toward her chest, but she used it to propel herself into the air. She struck a wall with her foot, bounced off a ceiling panel, and landed lightly on a moving platform. Every motion was faster, sharper, more controlled than before. Her mastery of the chamber was complete. What had once been a deadly trap was now her arena. Every spike, every panel, every surge of gravity was a tool she could use to grow stronger. She had learned to read the chamber like a book, predicting its moves, anticipating its attacks, and turning danger into advantage. The alien warriors outside whispered among themselves. Fear, awe, and disbelief filled the room. None of them had ever seen such skill, such control, such creativity. A human, small, fragile, and underestimated, had done what no warrior in the galaxy had ever done. The chamber pulsed once more violently, as if testing her final limits. Gravity reached insane levels. Spikes erupted from the floors, ceilings, and walls simultaneously. Panels tilted, walls shifted, and energy pulses exploded in blinding flashes. Most would have died instantly. She didn't flinch. She moved with fluid precision, striking spikes to redirect her momentum, landing on panels to launch herself higher, twisting midair to avoid crushing walls. The chamber itself seemed to follow her, reacting to her moves, almost acknowledging her mastery. Minutes passed in a blur. When the chamber finally calmed, she stood in the center, breathing heavily but composed. Her hair stuck to her face. Her muscles burned, but her eyes were sharp and confident. She had survived the most impossible trial, turned it into a training ground, and mastered it completely. The alien commander stepped back, his mouth open in shock. No human could ever, he began, then stopped. Words failed him. He had just witnessed the impossible. The human girl didn't speak. She looked around the chamber, her eyes bright with determination. This was no longer about survival. It was about power. She had discovered something the aliens had never known. That the deadliest challenges could be tools for growth, that danger could be a weapon in the right hands, and that a clever, determined mind could bend even the universe's strongest forces to its will. She smiled faintly. The chamber had become her playground, her arena, and her teacher, and she knew this was only the beginning. The whispers outside grew louder. "She is not just human," said one alien. "She is something more." The chamber, silent now, seemed to hum with energy, almost like it recognized its new master. The human girl breathed deeply, ready for whatever came next. She had survived, adapted, and thrived. The gravity chamber had met its match, and the galaxy had never seen anything like her before. Her playground was ready, and she was ready to play. The chamber had fallen silent. For the first time in its long, deadly history, the gravity chamber seemed still. Not because it was calm, but because it had met its equal. The human girl stood in the center, breathing steadily. Her chest rose and fell, muscles tense yet controlled, eyes sharp and unyielding. The arena that had crushed countless warriors, that had defeated the strongest of alien fighters, was no longer a weapon of death. It was her kingdom. Outside, the alien spectators were frozen, their eyes wide, jaws tight, their minds struggling to comprehend what they had just witnessed. No human or alien had ever survived the full trials. And yet here she was, not only surviving, but mastering every deadly force thrown at her. The commander stepped forward, his armor gleaming under the observation lights. His voice was calm, almost reverent, though his tone carried a hint of fear. She has done what no warrior ever could," he whispered. But she didn't hear him. Her focus was absolute. She had already learned the rhythm of the chamber, the patterns of its deadly mechanisms, and the limits of its forces. Everything that had once been a threat was now a tool, and she was ready to show the full extent of her power. The final challenge began without warning. Gravity surged beyond any level yet, crushing panels, snapping spikes from floors and ceilings, sending energy pulses that could disintegrate bones. The chamber was at its peak. Most warriors would have been flattened instantly, screams echoing in the metallic hall. She, however, smiled faintly, her mind racing with possibilities. The first wave hit. She leapt into the air, twisting mid-flight, dodging spikes erupting from the floor and ceiling. Each movement was calculated, fluid, precise. She used every panel as a springboard, every energy pulse as momentum. The deadly environment that killed her predecessors became her partner, amplifying her speed and strength. She flipped over a rising spike, landing on a tilted platform. The floor beneath her erupted, spikes shooting at angles designed to impale her. Instead of avoiding them, she timed her jumps to use the spike's force to launch herself higher. She bounced off walls, kicked off ceiling panels, and twisted midair, landing perfectly. Every move was faster, sharper, and more controlled than the last. Outside, alien warriors whispered in disbelief. She is controlling it," one said, voice trembling. "No, she is rewriting the chamber itself," another added, eyes wide. Her movements became a deadly dance. The energy cores in the chamber pulsed violently, releasing bursts of raw power meant to obliterate anyone who came near. She didn't fear them. She used them as stepping stones, propelling herself higher, dodging spikes, and striking moving panels to redirect her momentum. Every obstacle became part of chain reaction, a tool to gain speed, height, and control. The chamber, designed to punish, now seemed to bend to her will. Each spike, each shifting wall, each surge of gravity was something she could predict, manipulate, and use. Her mind was a conductor, and the deadly arena was her orchestra. The aliens outside could not look away. Their strongest warriors, their heroes, had all died in these chambers. And now a human, small, underestimated, fragile, was moving with impossible precision, turning every threat into advantage. She smiled faintly. She was no longer surviving. She was dominating. Every flip, twist, jump, and strike was a message. The human mind, combined with determination and creativity, could overcome even the deadliest technology. Suddenly, the chamber shifted violently. Gravity surged to maximum. Spikes erupted simultaneously from all directions. Panels twisted unpredictably, and energy pulses exploded in blinding flashes. Most would have died instantly. She, however, adapted immediately. She rolled, flipped, and launched herself into the air. A spike shot toward her chest. She used it to spring off into a higher trajectory, landing on a moving platform. Another spike shot from the ceiling. She kicked it midair, redirecting it to strike a wall, creating a perfect bounce for her next leap. Her mastery of the chamber was total. Every action was precise. Every reaction calculated. She had turned impossible into her playground, the deadliest arena into her weapon. Minutes passed like seconds. Every surge of gravity, every panel shift, every spike, every energy pulse was another chance to demonstrate her skill. She dodged, struck, flipped, and twisted in ways no human or alien had ever imagined. Her movements were elegant, deadly, and creative. And then came the moment of complete triumph. A massive surge of gravity crushed the floor, sending spikes shooting in every direction. Energy pulses erupted violently. Panels tilted and moved in chaotic patterns. Most warriors would have screamed, panicked, and fallen to their deaths. She, however, saw it as the ultimate challenge. She leapt, twisting through the chaos, striking a panel to launch herself higher. She bounced off a wall, dodged a spike midair, and landed on a moving platform with perfect balance. Another spike shot from the ceiling. She kicked it with precise timing, using it to propel herself toward the center of the chamber. And there, in the middle of the chaos, she stopped. She landed lightly, standing upright as if the deadly chamber was now hers to command. Gravity stabilized. Panels halted. Spikes ceased erupting. Energy pulses dimmed. The chamber, designed to destroy, now bowed to her mastery. The alien commander could not hide his awe. His voice trembled as he spoke. No human could ever. He stopped. There were no words left. The human girl had done the impossible. She had survived, adapted, and mastered every deadly aspect of the gravity chamber. She smiled, looking around the arena. Every obstacle, every spike, every surge of gravity had been a lesson. Every deadly mechanism had become a tool. She had not just survived. She had conquered. She had turned weakness into strength, fear into power, and the impossible into reality. The spectators outside were silent, eyes wide with disbelief. The strongest warriors of their kind had fallen here, and yet this human had not only survived, she had mastered the chamber completely. They whispered her name in awe, fear, and reverence. The human girl turned her gaze toward the commander, her eyes bright and confident. She had proven herself. But this was only the beginning. The gravity chamber had been her test, her trial, and her teacher. Now it was her domain. She raised her hand slightly, almost in salute, and whispered under her breath, "I am not done yet." The aliens outside realized something terrifying and awe-inspiring at the same time. The human had rewritten the rules of their deadliest challenge. No warrior had ever done what she had done. No human had ever turned a machine of death into a training ground, a playground, and a proving arena. Her body was exhausted, yet her mind was sharper than ever. Every step, flip, dodge, and strike had pushed her limits, expanded her skill, and revealed a power that the galaxy had never witnessed. She had proven that creativity, intelligence, and determination could surpass brute strength and technology. And as she walked out of the chamber, standing tall despite the exhaustion, she knew the legend of the gravity chamber had changed forever. The whispers outside became louder, turning into stunned silence and awe. Aliens who had mocked her now bowed in respect. Warriors who had scoffed now trembled. She had become something beyond human, a force capable of mastering the impossible. The gravity chamber had tested everyone before her. It had killed the strongest warriors across the galaxy. And now it had a master. She looked back one last time, her eyes gleaming. The chamber was no longer a prison. It was a playground. It was a tool. It was her arena. And in the silence that followed, she whispered more to herself than anyone else. Next time, I will not just survive. I will dominate. The human girl had triumphed. She had turned death into strength, fear into power, and the impossible into reality. And the galaxy would never forget her name, or the day a human became the master of the deadliest chamber in existence.